My phone isn't broken, Eleanor said. I just stopped answering. Her daughter had laughed and said, We only call you when it's convenient. By Friday, the deed was transferred, not to her daughter, to someone who showed up without being asked, because convenience doesn't inherit. Loyalty does. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The voice drifted upward through the old craftsman's floor, vents thin and unguarded, like steam rising off a pot left boiling too long. Ginny stood on the second-floor landing, paused mid-step, her left hand still loosely gripping the railing while the other held a half-empty mug of black coffee. She hadn't meant to stop there. She'd been on her way down to refresh her cup, maybe check the porch for the mail. But something in the pitch of her daughter's voice made her still. From the kitchen below, Lindsay's laugh bubbled up, full of familiarity but none of the warmth that used to come with it. We only call her when it benefits us, she said, words spoken so casually it might have been a joke between girlfriends. Another voice, lower and slicker, chimed in almost instantly. She's got nothing else going on, Jeffries said, chuckling as if they were in on some long-running gag. Ginny didn't move. Her grip on the railing didn't tighten, the coffee didn't spill. The only thing that shifted was something quiet inside her chest, a soft click like the sound of a deadbolt turning small, but final. Downstairs, footsteps padded across linoleum. A cupboard creaked, silverware clinked. Neither of them knew she was listening. She didn't plan to tell them otherwise. She turned silently and walked back down the hallway, the floor creaking faintly beneath her slippers. Instead of going to the kitchen, she veered left, stepping into the sunroom at the back of the house. The wide windows spilled pale golden light across the rug, illuminating the soft dust that floated lazily through the still summer air. Her coffee mug, now lukewarm, landed gently on the small oak-side table next to her chair. With a quiet breath, Ginny pulled open the top drawer. Inside lay her flip phone. Its case faded from pink to something closer to bone white. It lit up at her touch. She pressed a button and flipped through the recent call log, the same one she rarely bothered checking anymore. Christmas, Independence Day, Valentine's Day. One from the emergency room. Eli had a sprained wrist from band practice. That was it. No check-ins, no coffee invites, no weather chats, just holidays and hospital lights. She closed the phone and rested it on her lap. Outside, wind shifted the pine branches along the fence line, needles rustling like whispered things that wouldn't speak clearly. Her house had been full once. Her late husband, Richard, had planted every tree in that yard. He'd built the bench under the big fir, painted the shutters in that stubborn shade of blue she hated, and later grew to love. Now, the roots had deepened, the paint had faded, and the people inside moved like they owned the place but didn't know the first thing about what it cost to hold something together for decades. The porch screen creaked. Ginny didn't need to look to know it was Donna Riggs. Her oldest friend didn't bother with doorbells. I brought lemonade, Donna said, breezing in like summer itself, her large plastic cooler slung over one shoulder. The good kind, not that diet mess. Ginny tried to smile, but the corners of her mouth barely lifted. You always seem to show up when I need insulation. Donna set the cooler down with a grunt and pulled out 2 glasses, already full, already sweating in the heat. She handed one to Ginny and flopped into the chair across from her with the ease of someone who'd earned the right to be wherever she damn well pleased. You look like someone just hung up on you mid-sentence, Donna said, squinting. Or maybe like someone never called at all. Ginny looked down into her glass. The lemonade was thick and cloudy, the sugar strong enough to sting. They think I'm always on standby, she said softly, more to herself than to Donna. That I'll just keep waiting until they remember I exist. Donna didn't argue. She didn't offer comfort either. She just took a long sip, leaned back, and said, You ever notice how people don't see the wire until it's cut? Ginny blinked at her, confused. The line, Donna clarified, lifting her glass. You were a telecom tech for, 25 years? You kept people connected. That's what you've done your whole life, but maybe now's the time to disconnect a little. Ginny nodded slowly, her eyes drifting back out toward the trees, then downward toward the phone in her lap. She opened it again and stared at the quiet screen for a long moment. The silence wasn't empty this time. It was informative. It told her everything she needed to know. I might start with the phones, she murmured, more to herself than to Donna. Donna raised her glass. Cheers to that. From the kitchen, laughter echoed again, faint, thoughtless, undeserved. Ginny stood. She walked to the window, looking out toward the shed behind the house, a place no one had been in months, maybe years. Dusty, undisturbed, private. She turned back to Donna, her voice quiet but clear. Do you still have that old dolly you used when Frank moved your archive boxes? Donna looked up, startled by the question. Still in the garage. Why? Ginny didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her phone and began scrolling to a number she hadn't dialed in months Frank called her. The line didn't ring. Not yet. But her finger hovered. The basement hadn't changed much in 30 years. Same concrete floor, cool even in summer. Same exposed beams above, dust lining every copper pipe like fine powder on old bones. Ginny hadn't been down here in weeks, maybe months, not because she avoided it, but because there was simply nothing new to see. The place was functional, reliable, just like she'd always been. But this morning, as the upstairs laughter from the night before echoed faintly in her mind, the basement felt different, like a vault of truths she'd ignored too long. She flicked on the overhead light. The bulb buzzed, flickered, then steadied. Shadows stretched across the washer and dryer, over the shelves lined with paint cans and brittle cords. She made her way toward the far wall where the fuse box sat above the utility tabla surface that had, at one point, been reserved for careful paperwork and seasonal decorations. Now it was buried in layers of neglect. She cleared aside a bag of mulch and an empty detergent bottle, revealing a half-dozen envelopes, all unopened. Most had Jeffrey's name printed neatly in the corner. One had a red stripe marked Final Notice. Another bore the logo of a credit agency Ginny didn't recognize. She didn't open them. She didn't need to. Next to the stack was a thin yellow folder she kept for plumbing invoices. Flipped it open. The last 2 repairs had been nearly $600 each. One for the water heater. One for the basement sink Jeffrey insisted was leaking when, in truth, it had only needed tightening. She'd paid both bills. In full. Quietly. Automatically. She sat down on the wooden stool beside the fuse box and pulled out a notepad from the drawer beneath. Her hands moved without drama. Just precision, the same kind she'd used splicing wires under sidewalks in the 70s. One line at a time. Mortgage. Paid off, 2006. Title. Sole owner, no liens. Utilities. Still in her name. All of them. Taxes. Annual, deducted from savings. Occupants. 3. Only 1 contributor. She paused, then underlined the last item twice. Her pencil lead broke. Behind her, footsteps creaked on the basement stairs. She turned, expecting Lindsay, maybe Jeffrey. But instead, Donna's head appeared at the top of the steps. Eyes narrowed. Jesus, Gin. You're sitting down here like some ghost in a boiler room. Ginny didn't laugh. Didn't want to wake the house. Donna came down halfway, arms folded across her chest. You know you're being used, right? I do now. Not in the, oh, they don't appreciate me way. I mean used. Like they've hollowed out your name and stuck their own mail inside it. Ginny closed the folder slowly and stood. That's why I came down. To see how far the rot goes. Donna looked around the room with a grim nod. It's always the quiet corners where the mold grows first. Ginny didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out her flip phone again and walked toward the bottom of the stairs, the carpet runner worn thin from years of soft steps. She paused at the last one, thumb hovering over a name she hadn't fully committed to calling until now. She pressed it. The line rang once, then again, and on the third ring, a calm voice answered. Frank Calder speaking. Ginny cleared her throat gently. Hi, Frank. It's Ginny Whitaker. A brief pause on the other end. Well now, that's a welcome surprise. How can I help? Her voice was quiet but firm. I think we should talk about redirection. Of everything. Frank didn't need clarification. I can be ready tomorrow at 10. Make it 9, she said, then hung up. That night, the house settled into silence early. Lindsay had gone to a friend's networking dinner, as she called it. Jeffrey was out in the garage, pretending to organize tools he didn't own. Ginny stayed in the sunroom until the sky dimmed from amber to ink. The knock came gently, barely more than a tap. She turned to find Eli standing in the doorway, shoulders hunched in that way boys get when they want to speak, but don't know how to hold the weight of what they're about to say. I didn't laugh, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. Last night, when they were talking, Ginny studied him for a moment, 17, and still learning how to stand still in a storm. I know, she said finally. Eli nodded once, then turned to, Leave. Eli? He looked back. If anyone asks what I'm doing lately, she said, her voice even, tell them I've been checking the wires. He gave a half smile, unsure of the meaning but sensing it mattered, then disappeared into the hallway, silent as a closing door. The morning air in the sunroom was cool, fragrant with damp pine drifting in through the cracked window. Ginny sat with her laptop on the small wicker table, her flip phone beside her, humming gently with its faint backlight. On the screen, the carrier portal blinked up at her, asking, Are you sure you want to cancel this family plan? She didn't hesitate. Her finger pressed yes, then confirmed a second time when the prompt warned her that 4 active lines would be permanently disconnected. The signal bars in the corner flickered, then vanished. A clean break. She closed the laptop, took a slow sip of her coffee, and listened to the birds outside high, light chirps on the branches, oblivious to the tension knotted upstairs. For the first time in months, maybe years, the silence inside the house felt intentional, like a pause she had chosen. It didn't last long. The back door slammed so hard the wind chime on the porch clattered against the wall. Lindsay's voice cut through the house, shrill and gasping. My work line is down. Ginny didn't move from her seat. She waited until the footsteps stomped across the hardwood and stopped just short of the sunroom entrance. You shut it off? Lindsay's face was flushed, her mouth half open like she'd run out of words halfway through the sentence. That number was linked to my payroll, my client contacts. What the hell, Mom? Ginny didn't even blink. Must be inconvenient. Lindsay stared, stunned by the stillness, as if she'd expected chaos, or at least an apology. When none came, her expression crumpled into disbelief. Is this punishment? You're sabotaging my career. Ginny stood slowly, walking to the kitchen without a glance back. Your career was built on a number I paid for. Maybe build it on your own next time. Lindsay stood frozen for another moment, then spun on her heel and stormed out the front door, muttering under her breath. The moment she was gone, Donna emerged from the hallway like a storm cloud parting, laughter already bubbling in her throat. I swear to God, Gin! Donna wheezed, holding onto the counter for support. I haven't seen a takedown that surgical since the time Harold tripped over his own ego at town hall. Ginny cracked a slight smile and reached into the cupboard for her receipt folder. I needed the noise gone. The static. Donna wiped her eyes, still chuckling. If this is just phase 1, I might need to bring popcorn for the next act. I'm just making the record clean, Ginny replied, her tone soft but clipped with purpose. She opened the folder and laid out the first few documents, her phone bill paid by her, Jeffrey's boutique auto charges linked to her bank account, the old insurance rider on the house that she had updated twice but no one else ever asked about. She scanned them, time-stamped each one, then uploaded the files into a private folder on a USB drive labeled Clearance. Next, she printed the account logs, when the plan was opened, when new lines were added, how long each number had been under her billing. Donna looked over her shoulder, impressed. You're not just cleaning house, you're building the legal version of a flamethrower. I'm not burning anything, Ginny said calmly. I'm documenting it before someone else tries to twist it. By the time the folder was full, it was nearly noon. Ginny placed a quiet call to Frank Calder. This time, no hesitation, just intention. I'd like to draft the amendment, she told him. Frank's voice on the other end was steady. I'll pull the file. We'll prepare a quiet revocation, clause clean, no noise. I want it silent, but irreversible, she said. No alarms, no warnings. You'll have it, Frank replied. I'll courier the draft this evening. She hung up, feeling the strange stillness that came not with relief, but confirmation. A pressure valve releasing in stages. Everything she once gave freely was being slowly but unmistakably reclaimed. That evening, Donna came by with a leftover peach pie and 2 sets of matching mugs that read, You're on mute, in curly letters. Ginny smirked. Appropriate, I figured. Donna leaned against the counter. You know, Lindsay came by earlier. Said you've gone rogue. Wanted me to talk to you. What'd you say? Donna shrugged. Told her I'd pass the message along to your voicemail. Ginny let out a soft laugh. It felt real. Just after sunset, a knock came not at the front, not at the kitchen door, but soft and tentative, outside the sunroom. Ginny opened it slowly. Frank's courier stood there, briefcase in hand. No envelope, just a USB drive and a notary ledger. Ginny took it and thanked him. No need for more words. She sat at the table and plugged the drive in. The document blinked open on the screen. Revocation of distributive interest Lindsay Whitaker. Effective immediately. Irrevocable. Legally notified parties. 0. Her finger hovered over the signature field. The cursor blinked beside her name, Virginia Whitaker, as if waiting for her to hesitate. She didn't. Her finger tapped the touchpad. Signature confirmed. A quiet chime sounded from the screen. It was done. Ginny leaned back in her chair, her spine pressing into the familiar bend of the sunroom cushion. For a moment, she watched a squirrel dart across the fence outside, a flash of gray in the evening light. Her house was quiet again, not the kind of quiet you get when no one's home, but the kind that follows a decision too heavy to say out loud. She reached into the padded envelope the courier had left and found the second flash drive unlabeled, but unmistakably deliberate. Frank had said nothing about it on the phone, only that it had been recovered during another filing. She plugged it in. A folder appeared. Private. Odd. One file. No date. No context. She opened it. Lindsay's voice crackled through the tinny, speaker's tinny, not from poor quality, but from the clatter of too much silverware, the hum of polite laughter, and the rise of wine-soaked candor. Honestly, we're just biding time. I mean, she's got that whole place to herself. What does she even do all day? A man's voice cut in. Jeffrey. Once she's gone, we'll list it within a week. I already looked at CompsGood, get $750. Easy. A few people laughed. Someone clinked a glass. Ginny's hand didn't move. She didn't blink. The only reaction came in the smallest tightening of her jaw, the kind only those who've been quietly gutted learn to master. She listened again. There was no venom in their voices, just confidence, a certainty that she'd either never hear this or never fight back if she did. That made it worse. She copied the file, renamed it Estate Attachment 01, and dragged it into her encrypted folder before attaching it to an email addressed only to Frank. The subject line read, "Use only if needed." She pressed send. Donna showed up less than an hour later, holding 2 cups of chamomile tea and a look that said she'd sensed a shift even without knowing why. "You've got that look again," she said, easing herself down onto the floral love seat beside the bookshelves. Like the moment right before a transformer blows. Ginny took the tea, still warm, and held it in her lap. "I found something," she said. Donna didn't ask what. She just waited. "It's the way they speak when they think I've become furniture." Donna snorted. "Well, if you're furniture, at least you're the kind with sharp corners." Ginny almost smiled. Almost. "You taught the state how to wire telecom," Donna said softly. "Now wire your exit." Ginny nodded. The tea untouched. Already started. That night, while the house lay dormant Lindsay upstairs with her white noise machine, Jeffrey passed out in front of the muted television. Ginny moved in silence. She wore her old work gloves and crept through the attic like a thief in her own life. She sorted boxes not by category, but by consequence. One for family photos she wasn't ready to throw away, one for deeds, titles, and every receipt that proved the timeline of her sacrifice. One for Richard's military records, which she'd never wanted Lindsay to use as an anecdote for her friends' brunches. And one for Keep Saxton lunch pails, her father's watch, the black and white photos of her wedding day. Each box was labeled in clear, block letters. Keep. Legal. Eyes only. Not theirs. By midnight, the attic had been picked clean. She closed the door slowly and turned the deadbolt tone they'd installed for fire safety after Eli was born, but never used. Tonight, it served a different kind of prevention. She tucked the keys into a metal lockbox she slid under her bed, then changed into pajamas and sat once more in the sunroom, the flash drive still warm from the machine. The house was hushed, but no longer in control. She didn't feel relief. She didn't feel anger either. What she felt was gravity, the downward pull of something inevitable, finally accepted. Her flip phone buzzed quietly beside her. One new voicemail. No caller ID. She played it. Lindsay's voice, frantic but masked in polite urgency. Hey, can you call me back when you get this? We need to talk about next steps. Also, if you're packing up anything, make sure to leave the basement boxes. I think there's some of our stuff mixed in. Okay, thanks. Ginny didn't respond. She deleted the message before it finished. The sun was just beginning to rise behind the fir trees as Ginny pulled into the small parking lot outside Calder and Stein, attorneys at law. The gravel crunched softly under her tires. No other cars yet, just the dull orange glow of a porch light above the double doors and a faint rustling of leaves in the wind. She sat for a moment in the driver's seat, hands resting on the steering wheel, not in hesitation, but in reverence. What she was about to do wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was architecture laying the last support beam in a house she'd built with her own hands and had watched be hollowed out from the inside. Frank's office still smelled like oiled wood and lemon polish. He stood when she walked in, no tie, glasses perched low on his nose, a man who understood time not as urgency, but precision. "I've got it all prepped," he said, gesturing toward the polished walnut table between them. "Just need your signature and initials on the last 3 pages." Ginny sat down, pulled her reading glasses from her purse, and began reviewing line by line. Trustee, Eli David Whitaker. Grantor, Virginia Ruth Whitaker. Condition of activation: upon grantor's move to long-term care or time of passing. Exclusions: all claims of inheritance or right of occupancy not explicitly listed in this document are nullified. She paused. "I want to make sure it's airtight." Frank nodded. "It is. I've handled estate law for 40 years. This deed doesn't whisper. It closes doors." Ginny pressed her pen to the paper. Her initials were small, precise, and absolute. By the time she walked out of the office, a thin manila envelope under her arm, the world felt quieter, not lighter, but rearranged. Something had been set into motion that could no longer be undone. She didn't tell Eli. Not yet. Instead, she returned home and moved methodically through the house. She wasn't packing as if to leave, not in a way that would raise eyebrows. She took what mattered: Richard's medals, her own pension documents, the quilt Donna had made her after his funeral, and began ferrying them in small, plain boxes 2 doors down. Donna's garage smelled like motor oil and cedar mulch. She cleared a space on the second shelf for Ginny's labeled boxes. "You're leaving breadcrumbs for fools to follow," Donna said, eyeing the contents of a box marked QTR3, proof. Ginny gave a faint smile as she stacked another behind it. "Let them trip on every one." Donna didn't press for details. They were past that stage of friendship. She simply handed Ginny a folded tarp and asked if she needed a dolly for the next run. The deception wasn't loud. It didn't require masks or shadows. It existed in the pause Ginny took before answering questions, in the way she left empty hangers in her closet but not enough to signal absence, in the subtle weight shift when she locked the attic door again, this time with nothing left inside it but air. Lindsay never noticed. Jeffrey asked once if she'd seen his spare drill set. She told him it was probably behind the water heater. He grunted and moved on. By the 3rd afternoon, the shelves in Donna's garage held 6 boxes each with one purpose: to outlast entitlement. That evening, Ginny sat on Donna's back porch with 2 cups of tea and a single legal folder resting on her lap. The sky above them was brushed in copper and ash. A dog barked 2 streets over. The house she once called home stood in the distance, glowing faintly behind the trees, its windows unaware they'd already lost their claim to permanence. Donna glanced at the folder but didn't ask. "They don't even know they're standing on glass." "Not yet," Ginny said quietly. They drank in silence. When she returned home, the front lights were off. Jeffrey's car was gone. Lindsay's heels were tossed near the stairs. The kitchen smelled faintly of boxed wine and leftover salmon. She walked past them all, climbed the stairs, and closed her bedroom door behind her. She retrieved the metal lockbox from beneath the bed and added the envelope from Frank's office to its contents. Then she locked it, slid it back into place, and sat on the edge of the bed knot, tired, just aware. She didn't check her phone. She didn't need to. Outside, the night deepened, unaware that the house it surrounded no longer belonged to those inside it. Ginny stood at the front door just after sunrise, a small black canvas pouch tucked beneath her arm and a screwdriver in hand. The morning was cool, damp from overnight drizzle, and the fir trees cast long, sleepy shadows across the porch. She worked in silence. The old deadbolt came free with a few clean turns, no struggle. No rust. She set it gently into the pouch beside the matching back door lock, then opened a small cardboard box and pulled out the replacements. New brass fixtures, brushed and gleaming in the pale light. Security grade. No key copies at the hardware store. No shared access without intention. The front lock clicked into place easily. By the time the sun hit the steps, she was already at the back door, fitting the last plate flush into the frame. She wiped her palms on a dish towel and tucked both new keys into an envelope she labeled E1 in small, careful script. That envelope would stay with her. Inside, she unwrapped the second piece of her Plana digital keypad, slim and black, with a silent touchscreen and a lockout delay for failed codes. She mounted it just inside the garage entry and programmed a 4-digit PIN. She entered it once, tested it twice, then cleared the history. Only Eli would know the code. Only Eli would be trusted to use it. It was nearly noon when Lindsay returned from the gym, earbuds still in, oblivious to the change. She reached for the front doorknob and stopped. She twisted again. Locked. She bent down and jiggled the key in confusion, then pulled it out and stared at it as if the metal itself had changed. "Mom?" she called, knocking twice. "Why is the lock different?" Ginny, still in the kitchen unpacking a grocery bag, didn't answer right away. She gave it a beat, then another. "Mom!" The voice sharpened. Ginny opened the door slowly. "Yes? What happened to the locks?" "I upgraded them," Ginny said, her tone measured but calm. "Security system refresh. Standard practice after 30 years. Lindsay blinked. "You didn't say anything." Ginny shrugged. "You never asked." The pause that followed was wide enough to feel the air shift between them. Lindsay crossed her arms. "Do I get a key?" "Eventually," Ginny said, already turning back toward the kitchen. "When it's needed." Behind the curtain of the front window, Donna leaned against her porch post, sipping iced tea from a tall tumbler, watching the exchange unfold like the final act of a courtroom drama. When Ginny glanced up through the side glass, Donna raised the cup slightly in salute and gave a long, slow nod of satisfaction. The next afternoon, Ginny pulled up in Donna's driveway with the final round of labeled Boxestuo large storage bins, one marked pension and the other sentimental in her steady block letters. Eli stepped off his bike and wordlessly took one from her arms. They didn't speak as they moved the bins into the shaded garage. There was no need. Trust had become its own language between them. Inside, Donna adjusted a set of old patio chairs to make space on the lower shelves. She whistled low when she saw the new labels. "You're nesting outside your nest now." Ginny wiped her brow. "I'm just keeping the valuables where termites won't reach them," Donna chuckled. "Or where 2 freeloaders won't sniff them out first." Once everything was stored and sealed, Ginny handed Eli a small folded slip of paper. He opened it slowly. A 4-digit code. He looked up, brows lifted slightly in surprise. "You're the only one who'll need it," Ginny said. "For now." Eli nodded, folding the slip carefully and tucking it into his wallet without a word. His silence wasn't avoidance, it was reverence. Later that night, Ginny poured herself a cup of tea and sat by the window. She watched as Jeffrey returned from wherever he disappeared to on Fridays, struggling with 2 bags of groceries and a phone held between shoulder and ear. He didn't even notice the new deadbolt as he slipped through the garage, unaware that his access had narrowed in ways he couldn't yet measure. In the distance, a single porch light glowed at Donna's. Beneath it, a row of boxes sat safe in the cool dark. The balance was shifting, slowly, deliberately. Ginny sat across from the branch manager in a small, glass-walled office that smelled faintly of toner and someone's cinnamon gum. It was mid-morning. The lobby was calm, just the low murmur of transactions and the occasional shuffle of paper through a printer. Sunlight filtered through tall windows and landed in long stripes across the desk between them. The managerially 30s, impeccably polite clicked through her screen, with a kind of rehearsed helpfulness that made Ginny feel both like a guest and a threat. "I've reviewed the accounts linked to your profile," she said, smiling without warmth. "Did you want to remove all external access, or just specific users?" Ginny took a moment, then slid a folded printout across the table. 2 names, Jeffrey Harlan, Lindsay Whitaker. The manager blinked. "Understood. I'll initiate full revocation on all shared or emergency permissions." That includes any authorized bill pay links, auto withdrawals, or third-party vendor access connected to either name. That's the goal, Ginny said. Her voice wasn't cold, but it was final. 10 minutes later, the screen confirmed it. Access privileges removed. Ginny exhaled slowly. Not relief, not satisfaction, something deeper, like unplugging a machine that had been humming in the background of her life for too long barely audible, but draining power all the same. I'd also like to flag any unusual withdrawals from the last 90 days, she added, her tone sharper now. Cross, check them against my daughter's boutique business. Any vendors labeled Sunset Grove Collective. The manager hesitated, clicked, then paused again. I do see 6 recurring payments, she said carefully, scrolling. They appear to be withdrawals routed through a processing uplinked to Miss Whitaker's business license. All debits from your checking account. Ginny's face didn't change, but her fingers tightened on the armrest of her chair. How long? 18 months. They increase quarterly. How much has she taken? The manager clicked, winced. Just under 6,000. Ginny nodded once, slowly. Well, she murmured, more to herself than to the woman across from her. I just gave her a full refund. The manager glanced up. Excuse me? 0, Ginny said. That's what she has now. Go ahead and freeze the account. I'll open a new one. The manager hesitated. That will require updating any government or pension deposits. I know, Ginny interrupted. I'll handle it. When she left the bank, the air felt clearer, the light harsher. A line had been crossed, and she hadn't flinched. Back home, she called Frank. His voice was calm, as always, but there was a new undercurrent of respect in eye-tone reserved for people who had stopped asking and started moving. I'll amend the trust this afternoon, he said. I'll remove any implied financial ties to Lindsay or Jeffrey, retroactively and going forward. Leave a placeholder for Eli, Ginny added. Educational expenses only, discretionary release. Understood. That night, Eli came over after school. Donna had told him there were documents to help scan. He didn't ask questions, just powered up the desktop in Ginny's office and waited while she laid out the folders. Bank statements, transfer confirmations, notarized authorizations. Ginny stood beside him as he fed them, one by one, into the flatbed scanner. He was precise, focused, his fingertips careful on the keys, his posture respectful. At one point, he paused. Do you want to upload a backup copy? Yes, she said. 2 places, one in the encrypted drive, one in the final files folder. He nodded and got to work, humming quietly under his breath, something instrumental, wordless, but steady. Donna came in with 3 mugs of peppermint tea, raising an eyebrow as she saw the pile of paperwork. Well, damn, she muttered. You didn't just trim the vins, you uprooted the whole damn trellis. Ginny gave a faint smile. I unplugged their lifeline. Donna lifted her cup. May their service be permanently disconnected. As the last file scanned through, Ginny stood back and looked at the small stack of papers now organized, labeled and duplicated in triplicate. It wasn't just protection, it was preparation. By the time Eli left for the evening, the house had darkened into a soft hush. Outside, a light drizzle tapped against the windows, rhythmic and even. Ginny walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. Taped to the inside of the door was a grocery list in Lindsay's handwriting: almond milk, protein bars, wine, all things Ginny never drank, never bought, and had apparently paid for out of muscle memory. She pulled the list down, tore it in half, then again, then again. The sound of the refrigerator door slamming shut echoed across the kitchen like a shot. Ginny didn't flinch. She sat at the table, a legal pad in front of her, pen resting neatly across the top margin. A steaming cup of chamomile sat untouched beside her glasses case. The air in the room felt charged, not loud, but tight, like a static field seconds before a storm. Lindsay stood at the island, arms crossed, jaw set tight. Her eyes, usually glazed with forced charm or mild disinterest, now sparked with confusion and something else. Panic, maybe. Or pride with nowhere left to land. You're sabotaging your own family, she said, her voice rising just enough to border on a tremble. Ginny looked up from the pad. No, she said quietly. Just filtering the line for clarity. Lindsay blinked, as if the words came in a dialect she didn't understand. What does that even mean? She snapped. Since when do you talk like that? Ginny pushed the pen aside. Since I stopped pretending I wasn't paying for the noise. From the far corner of the living room, Jeffrey entered, dragging his feet in worn socks and carrying a lukewarm cup of coffee. He looked as though he'd just woken from a nap he hadn't earned. What now? He asked, voice gravelly. What's the issue? She's cutting everything, Lindsay barked. Bank access, phones, locks. She changed the damn locks. Jeffrey set his cup down harder than necessary. Jesus, Ginny, this whole thing's starting to feel hostile. Ginny didn't answer. He stepped forward, lifted a cupboard door, and slammed it shut without reaching for anything. The sound reverberated through the cabinets. You've lost it, he muttered. You're letting that bitter friend of yours fill your head with... The door to the porch creaked open before he could finish. Donna Riggs stood there, holding a peach cobbler in a foil tray, like a gift she had no intention of sharing. She took in the room without blinking. Her eyes narrowed just enough to draw a line around the edges of the tension. Well, if this isn't a Hallmark family reunion, she said dryly. Lindsay turned, exasperated. Can you not just walk in? Donna set the cobbler down with a thunk on the counter. Lower your voice, sweetheart, or I'll lower it for you. Ginny bit back the smallest smile. Lindsay scoffed and turned back toward her mother. You think this is empowering? It's pathetic. You're rewriting the rules in the fourth quarter. No, Ginny said, rising slowly from her chair. I'm enforcing the ones that always existed. You just stopped reading the fine print. Jeffrey looked at Donna, then back to Ginny. What exactly do you think you're accomplishing with all this? Accountability, she said simply. The room went still. Footsteps creaked down the hall. Eli appeared in the doorway, school bag slung over one shoulder, headphones around his neck. He looked at the Cena's mother's arms flailing in disbelief, Jeffrey red-faced, Donna bracing herself with one hip against the counter and then to Ginny, standing calm and steady in the middle of it all. He didn't speak, but he nodded once to his grandmother. Not the kind of nod you give when you agree with someone, the kind you give when you recognize courage. Ginny returned the nod, barely perceptible. Lindsay's voice softened, desperation creeping in. Mom, if you're trying to prove a point, it's already made. Just stop. Ginny studied her daughter for a long moment. Points aren't the problem, she said. Patterns are. Lindsay opened her mouth, but no words came. Behind her, Donna popped the foil on the cobbler and muttered, I've had quieter nights at bingo. Jeffrey turned abruptly, grabbed his cup, and walked out of the kitchen with a muttered, Unbelievable. The front door opened, then slammed shut. Lindsay followed a moment later, heels clacking in retreat. The silence that remained wasn't empty. It was earned. Eli stepped inside, placed his bag gently on the floor, and pulled a chair out at the table. I'm not hungry, he said, but I'll sit with you if you want company. Ginny reached for her tea. I do. They sat there together. No conversation. Just the quiet hum of the fridge and the faint rustling of Donna flipping through a magazine she'd brought but hadn't yet opened. Outside, the wind picked up slightly. Pine needles brushed against the window like fingernails. The envelope was glossy. That was the first red flag. Ginny found it on the kitchen counter that morning, tucked beneath a pile of junk mail and an empty protein bar wrapper. It wasn't addressed to her. No name. Just a sleek real estate logo in navy and silver. The kind that belonged on high-end condo brochures or lifestyle magazines. She almost threw it away. But something in her gut said, read first, burn later. She slid a butter knife under the flap and pulled out the contents. A listing preview. Photos of her own house-cropped, brightened, staged as if it already belonged to someone else. The front porch with its freshly painted railings. The sunroom, framed to look like a bonus flex space. The master bedroom, shot at an angle that conveniently excluded her quilt, her dresser, the indentation where she sat every night. The print at the bottom was clear. Pre-listing packet for 3,316 Alder Ridgewood pricing review pending owner sign-off. Agent, Shelley McMahon, Ridgewood Real Estate. Client names, Lindsay Whitaker and Jeffrey Harlan. Ginny stood in the kitchen, the envelope in her hand, the air suddenly cold. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She went straight to the drawer by the fridge, pulled out her phone, and dialed Frank. By the third ring, called her. Frank, she said, voice steady. They tried to list the house. She heard his chair creak, paper shuffle. Say that again? I have a realtor packet in my hand. Full-color photos. Pre-list agreement. They're using their names. Frank swore under his breath. Send me scans. I'll have a cease and desist drafted in an hour. We'll follow with the trust document and a realtor disclosure violation. Ginny looked out the window. The house she'd kept warm through blizzards. The porch she'd swept clean in every fall. The door Lindsay now couldn't even unlock without asking. And still, they'd tried to sell it. Tried to erase her from the title with nothing but nerve and networking. An hour later, the paperwork was in Frank's hands. By noon, the realtor had received a formal cease and desist, backed by the full text of the Whitaker, trust legally executed, notarized, irrevocable. That night, Lindsay burst through the door like she'd been lit from underneath. You went behind my back? She shrieked, brandishing her phone. You sent lawyers after me. Ginny was sitting calmly in the living room, reading. She folded the corner of her page. You went behind mine first, she said. And no, I didn't send them after you. I sent them after your mistake. Lindsay's face flushed crimson. It's our house, too. Ginny rose slowly, walked to the desk drawer, and retrieved a thick envelope. She held it out. Lindsay didn't take it. Ginny laid it on the table. That's the filing. It includes the deed, the trust, and the affidavit. Your name's not in it. Not once. Lindsay looked down, as if the paper itself had insulted her. Her hands stayed at her sides. Across the room, Donna stepped inside through the front door, uninvited and unapologetic, holding a Diet Coke and a bag of caramel corn. She took one glance at Lindsay's face and grinned. Well, damn, Gin. That's the cleanest takedown I've seen since Judy Kirkland caught her husband with the church organist and walked away with the house and the dog. Lindsay turned to her, breath short. You think this is funny? I think it's overdue, Donna said. And beautifully executed. Lindsay looked back at Ginny. So that's it? You're cutting us out? Ginny didn't blink. Number, you cut yourselves out the moment you acted like I was temporary. Jeffrey appeared in the hallway then, eyes glazed and confused, still holding his phone. They said it's not valid, that we're not even on the title. You're not, Ginny said, and you never were. He opened his mouth, but no argument came. Eli had been sitting on the staircase this whole time quiet, listening. He stood up now, descended the last 2 steps, and looked directly at Lindsay, then Jeffrey, then finally Ginny. They finally got the call they didn't expect, he said. Ginny turned to her grandson and nodded once. But the line's been open for years. Donna popped a piece of caramel corn into her mouth and whispered, I love this show. Lindsay backed away, shaking her head like the room had gone crooked. This isn't over, she hissed. Ginny calmly picked her book back up. It never really started. Lindsay stormed out. Jeffrey followed, his phone pressed to his ear, muttering about legal advice. Donna watched the door slam, then turned to Ginny. You've got a real talent for precision. Remind me never to cross you. Ginny raised an eyebrow. Just pay your utilities and you'll be fine. The notice was printed on thick linen paper, no letterhead, just simple black ink on a clean background. The language was neutral, almost gentle, if not for the unmistakable authority behind it. Notice to vacate 21 days. Ginny slid it under the door of the guest room Lindsay had long since claimed as a master suite. She did the same for Jeffrey's makeshift studio on the other end of the hall, the one filled with tangled cords and unopened equipment boxes. Neither door opened. No protests yet. But she heard Lindsay's footsteps freeze the moment the paper hit the floor. She returned to the sunroom and sat with her tea, watching the pine branches shift against the early spring wind. The house, for once, felt like it was holding its breath with her not bracing for chaos, but waiting for clarity. By late afternoon, the storm broke. You're evicting us? Lindsay's voice cracked at the end, high and disbelieving. You actually typed this up and slid it under the door like we're squatters? Ginny didn't look up from the crossword she was working on. I didn't type it. Frank's office did. Lindsay stepped closer, waving the notice like it might catch fire in her hand. We're your family. You're kicking us out for what, some technicality? It's not a technicality, Ginny said. It's ownership. You're unbelievable, Lindsay snapped. You've let that woman, she jabbed a finger toward the window, where Donna was walking up the drive with a roll of masking tape, poison you against your own daughter. Frank's handling any further communication, Ginny replied evenly. I'd suggest you route your concerns through him. Jeffrey entered from the side hallway, a cereal bowl in his hand and disheveled as ever. "You can't just throw us out." "I'm not throwing," Ginny said. "I'm letting go." Behind them, Donna opened the door without knocking. "I brought the labels!" She held up a pack of fluorescent stickers and 2 Sharpies. Eli followed behind her, arms full of flattened cardboard boxes and a roll of packing paper tucked under his chin. Lindsay stared, dumbfounded. "You're packing us up now, like we're guests whose stay expired?" "No," Donna said casually, already writing on a label. "Like people who overstayed what was never theirs." They worked quietly. Ginny sat on the bench near the stairwell, sorting through her own belonging ceramic dishes wrapped carefully in newspaper, framed photos stacked face down so the glass wouldn't crack. For every item marked for me, another box was labeled for them and placed by the front door. No one said much. Even Lindsay, red-eyed and pacing, stopped shouting after a while. The air had thickened with finality, the kind that makes noise feel irrelevant. At one point, Jeffrey knocked over a stack of books, muttered something under his breath, and left to make a call. He didn't come back for hours. Lindsay hovered near the hallway, arms crossed, watching Donna tape a lid shut with military efficiency. "I hope you're proud of yourself," she said to Ginny. "I am," Ginny said simply. "You betrayed us?" Ginny looked up then, meeting her daughter's eyes with a steadiness that had taken months to rebuild. "No," she said. "You told me what I was worth. I finally believed you." Lindsay didn't respond. She just turned away, like someone who'd walked into a room she no longer recognized. By the end of the evening, the house looked lighter, still cluttered, still in transition, but lighter. The hallway echoed again. The kitchen counters reappeared beneath months of clutter, and the corners Ginny had once stopped seeing began to breathe again. Eli stacked the last of the For Them boxes near the garage door and looked back toward his grandmother. "Want me to stay tonight?" Ginny shook her head. "You go home. I've got this." Donna kissed Ginny on the cheek and whispered, "Don't be surprised if they try one last swing." Ginny gave a small nod. "I hope they do. It'll tell me they still think they have something left to lose." As the house quieted, Ginny stood in the center of the living room, half empty now, her quilt folded neatly on the couch, her old clock ticking louder than usual, and breathed in the scent of her own space returning. The last morning in the house began the way most had: soft light through the kitchen blinds, the low hum of the refrigerator, and birdsong filtering through the open window over the sink. But this time, the air felt different, finished. Ginny stood in the foyer with her coat draped over one arm, her lockbox clutched in the other. She glanced down the hallway once more, not out of sentiment, but verification. No noise, no forgotten drawer, no strings left untied. Behind her, the living room was hollowed out. The rug was rolled, the shelves bare. The grandfather clock, now wrapped in moving blankets, waited beside the open front door. Everything else had been divided, delivered, or discarded. The For Them boxes were gone. So were the freeloaders. Eli waited outside, leaning against the handrail of the porch with the calm patience of someone who understood that a farewell doesn't need words. He held a thermos in one hand and a folded lawn chair in the other. "You ready?" he asked gently. Ginny looked around once more, not at the things, but the empty spaces they'd left. "Yeah," she said. "Let's go." Her new apartment was small but full of light. 3rd floor, west-facing windows that caught the sunset like clockwork. No yard, no attic, no basement to store the weight of other people's needs. Just what she brought and what she chose to keep. The furniture had arrived earlier in the week, moved quietly by Donna's church group volunteers, who came with dolly carts and casseroles. Her quilt now lay neatly across the back of the couch. The lockbox was placed in the top drawer of the nightstand. The framed photo of Richard sat on the windowsill beside a tiny, thriving fern. By the second week, it already felt like home. Eli visited often, usually after school. He'd drop his bag by the door, hand her a cup of herbal tea without a word, and update her on his music theory class or the weird substitute in biology. He never asked questions about the house, never brought up his parents unless Ginny did, which she didn't. One afternoon he arrived with a package tucked under his arm. "From Donna," he said, setting it on her new porch table. It was long, flat, wrapped in brown paper and sealed with floral tape. Ginny peeled it open slowly. A wood-burned sign, Polished, smooth, and painted in soft script. Peace lives here. She stared at it for a moment, fingers tracing the grooves in the wood. I think it does, she said softly. Donna visited the next day, unceremoniously, as usual. She brought a stack of old magazines and a tub of lemon bars. You've got the best crossbreeze on this floor, she declared, flopping down on the couch and kicking off her shoes. You always say that, Ginny replied. Doesn't make it less true. They laughed the kind of laugh that fills a quiet room instead of cracking it, the kind that rebuilds instead of replaces. Later that night, Ginny sat in her reading chair, the porch light casting a soft glow over her journal. The first page was blank. She opened to the second, began with the date, then paused, and wrote, I didn't leave the house behind. I left the weight. She closed the book gently, set it beside her glasses, and reached for her phone. There was a new voicemail from Lindsay. She didn't listen. Instead, she opened her contacts, scrolled, and hit block. The screen asked if she was sure. She was. She placed the phone face down and turned off the lamp. The room dimmed, quiet but not silent. No tension in the walls, no footsteps in the hallway. Just peace, the kind she didn't ask permission to claim. The courtroom was colder than Ginny expected, built for neutrality, not comfort. Pale wood benches, no windows, just fluorescent light and polished silence. The clock on the wall didn't tick. It watched. Ginny sat beside Frank at the calm plaintiff's table, hands folded in her lap, spine straight. She wore slate-gray slacks, a charcoal cardigan, and her late husband's wedding ring on a simple chain around her neck. No makeup, no pretense. Lindsay and Jeffrey sat across the aisle, both overdressed and underprepared. Lindsay in a cream blazer, her makeup heavy and a shade too bright for the setting. Jeffrey in a suit he hadn't worn since his last failed pitch meeting, collar uneven, shoes scuffed. The judge entered Honorable T.M. Rourke, late 60s, precise, unflinching, no small talk. We're here to address petition number 771, C. Whitaker v. Whitaker, concerning the legal standing of the Whitaker Family Trust, transfer of residential title, and allegations of undue influence, the judge said, scanning the bench with practiced efficiency. Frank stood, calm and unreadable. We're prepared, Your Honor. Lindsay rose too quickly. Your Honor, just before we start, I want to say this isn't about money. This is about being cut out. My mother was manipulated. Ginny didn't blink. The judge raised an eyebrow. You'll have your turn. Lindsay sat back, clenching her fists in her lap. Jeffrey kept looking toward the door, as if a better exit might suddenly appear. Frank handed over a binder, neatly tabbed and labeled. Exhibit A, the trust, executed and notarized, with activation clause per statute. Exhibit B, updated title and deed transfer to sole beneficiary, Eli Whitaker. Exhibit C, supporting bank documentation indicating no shared accounts, no dependency, and clear financial separation dating back 2 years. Judge Rourke flipped through silently, nodding slightly as she read. The room held its breath between each page turn. Lindsay stood again, slower this time. My mother was emotionally coerced, she said, voice trembling. She's been isolated, influenced by outside parties who have turned her against her own family. Your Honor, Frank said calmly, we anticipated this line of argument. We submit one additional piece of audio evidence, Exhibit D. He inserted the flash drive. The courtroom speakers crackled briefly, then settled. Lindsay's voice, familiar and sharpened by wine. Honestly, we're just biding time. She's got that whole place to herself. What does she even do all day? Then Jeffries. Once she's gone, we'll list it within a week. I already looked at ComScould get 750. Easy. Silence followed, not awkward, heavy. The judge didn't look up. She clicked the player off herself, then leaned back, hands steepled. Miss Whitaker, she said evenly, eyes on Lindsay. Would you like to rephrase your claim of emotional coercion? Lindsay opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Jeffrey leaned forward. We didn't know we were being recorded. That isn't the question, the judge said. The question is, does the trust appear legally sound, and was it executed of the grantor's free will without coercion, fraud, or diminished capacity? She glanced toward Ginny. Miss Whitaker, are you of sound mind today? Yes, Ginny said clearly. And I was when I signed it. No further questions. The judge looked back at Frank. Counselor? Nothing more, Your Honor. The gavel struck once. Petition dismissed. The trust stands. All prior property claims are nullified as of its date of execution. Ginny didn't move. Frank gave the faintest nod. Congratulations, he murmured, his voice low and discreet. That's a clean record. Lindsay turned in her seat. Her face had hardened not with anger, but with the knowledge that she had played every card she had, and none of them landed. Jeffrey didn't speak. He didn't even stand. Just stared at the back of the courtroom as if waiting for it to open into a different outcome. As Ginny and Frank packed up their documents, Lindsay brushed past them in the aisle. "This won't last," she hissed under her breath. "You're not as strong as you think." Ginny looked at her, not with defiance, but with perfect, disarming calm. "Then it won't take long to outlast you." She walked out first. The hallway beyond the courtroom was quiet, lined with old corkboards and faded notices. Ginny stepped into the sun outside and felt the warmth press into her skin. Eli stood near the planter beds by the curb, waiting with his backpack slung over one shoulder and 2 paper cups in his hands. "Chamomile," he said, handing her one. "I figured you'd want something simple." Ginny smiled, genuine and full. Exactly right. The envelope was pale blue, hand-addressed in Ginny's meticulous print. Eli found it tucked behind the screen door of her apartment, weighted with a ceramic frog figurine that hadn't moved since she first settled in. No fanfare. Just the envelope. Just the message. He stepped inside and sat on her couch without a word. Ginny poured 2 cups of tea, set them on the table, then sat opposite him with her hands folded in her lap. Eli opened it slowly. Inside was the full title deed, notarized and recorded, stamped twice in red. Sole owner, Eli David Whitaker. Effective immediately. Tucked behind it was a handwritten note on lined legal pad paper. No greeting, just this. Because you stayed kind. Because you listened. Because no one ever had to teach you how to stay. Ginny watched him read it twice. On the 3rd pass, his hands trembled. He set the paper down, leaned forward, elbows on knees, and buried his face in his palms. He didn't sob. He just breathed hard like someone had been holding up a roof too long and finally got permission to set it down. "I'll take care of it," he whispered. "I promise." "I know," Ginny said. Outside, a breeze rattled the porch railing. Across from her, Donna sat in the rocking chair with a plate of lemon bars and a smirk. "That house finally earned its soul back," she muttered. "Took 30 years, but hell, worth it." Ginny smiled faintly. It was never about the house. It was about the door. "What do you mean?" "I kept opening it for people who never knocked." Donna raised her glass of lemonade. "Well, here's to deadbolts and descendants." That night, after Eli left title folder tucked neatly in his messenger bag, eyes still shining with disbelief, Ginny pulled a small notepad from the kitchen drawer and jotted down her first day as a mentor volunteer. Community Tech Center, Thursday, 10 a.m., new intake orientation. She circled it twice. Later that week, she arrived early. She wore her old county badge, clipped to a fresh lanyard. The kids were half her age and twice as loud. But the moment she started explaining router protocols and digital forensics, the room went still. She was sharp. She was thorough. She was finally heard. Back home, she installed a landlinaut out of nostalgia, but choice. A real phone, with a spiral cord and a heavy receiver. No caller ID, just the numbers she chose to memorize. Donna, Frank, Eli, the tech center. No one else. It rang once the day after it was installed. "Whitaker residence," Ginny answered. A pause on the other end. Then Eli's voice. It just felt right. "It is right," she said. "Now you always have a way home." He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. Ginny hung up, wrapped herself in her old cardigan, and stepped out onto the balcony. The sign Donna gave her still sat propped against the rail. "Peace lives here." Below it, a small planter box had started to bloom lavender, basil, and one stubborn rosebud that hadn't opened yet. Ginny leaned against the railing and let the cool air wrap around her. Below her feet, the world kept moving. Above her head, it finally stopped spinning. The landline didn't ring. It blinked. One new message. Ginny stared at the small red light beside the handset. Its glow soft but insistent, as if asking a question she already knew the answer to. She waited until her tea cooled, until the sky outside shifted from late gold to dusk blue, until the only sounds in the apartment were the ceiling fan's slow rotation and the rustle of her cardigan against the arm of the chair. Then she pressed *1. Lindsay's voice came through cracked and breathy. "Mom, it's me. Look, I know things got out of hand, but I've been thinking. A lot. And maybe we both said things we didn't mean. Maybe there's still a way to work through this. I miss how things were. Call me. Please." A pause. Not long enough to matter. Then the line clicked off. Ginny sat there for a long time. Not sad. Not angry. Just aware of the choreography in that voice. The angles softened on purpose. The apology wrapped in a plea that never once said sorry. She pressed *7. Message deleted. She reached for the folder on the side table, the one marked medical and emergency. Pulled out the standard forms. Intake for the clinic. Her insurance portal. The assisted. Living pre-admit application she'd kept in draft, just in case. Next to primary emergency contact, she took a black pen and crossed out Lindsay Whitaker. Underneath it, she wrote in clean, all-caps print, Eli David Whitaker. The doorbell rang. Eli stepped in, cheeks flushed from the spring wind, a manila envelope under one arm. He didn't bother removing his shoe. She never did unless she asked. "You're early," she said, smiling. "I got the email," he said breathlessly, holding up the envelope. "I got in. Music program at Columbia. Full acceptance. I'm in." Ginny's smile wide and not showy. Not loud. Just proud. Deeply proud. She reached out, and he came to her side, resting the envelope between them. "What's next?" she asked softly. He exhaled. "I want to stay in the house. Commute the first year. Use it as a base. I want to treat it right. Then we'll set it up right," Ginny said. That night, they sat together at the table drafting a rental agreement. She explained tenant protections, what a leaseback meant, how to manage utilities under a trust-owned residence. He listened closely, taking notes, asking sharp questions. It wasn't just about living in a space. It was about learning how to honor. 1. "I don't want to live there because I inherited it," he said. "I want to earn it." "You already did," she said. The next morning, Donna arrived with 2 bagels, a mason jar of cold brew, and a framed photograph she'd dug out of her garage Ginny at a telecom conference in 1984, standing next to a row of server racks, arms crossed, half a smile, total command. She hung it next to the landline. "You taught silence how to roar," Donna said, tapping the frame with one red fingernail. Ginny looked at it for a long moment. "Took me long enough." That afternoon, Eli returned to the house to start repainting the back room. He sent her a text before leaving. "It feels like the walls can breathe again," Ginny replied. "That's because they're no longer holding their breath." She turned her phone face down again, sipped her tea, and looked out at the late light spilling across her balcony. One rose in the planter box had finally opened deep red, edged in gold. Just beneath it, the soil trembled slightly in the breeze. The headline was printed in bold serif across the center fold of the Ridgewood Gazette's Sunday edition. "Senior woman reclaims legacy, one document at a time." The photo beneath it was candid but composed Ginny sitting on the bench outside the community tech center, her lanyard caught mid-swing in the breeze, a student laughing at something just out of frame. She looked like someone entirely whole, not triumphant, just unburdened. She unfolded the paper slowly at her kitchen table, glasses low on her nose, a lemon bar balanced on the saucer beside her tea. Donna sat across from her, cross-legged, elbow deep in the crossword puzzle. "Page 2, Donna said, tapping her pen. "That's where the good stuff starts." Ginny turned the page. The article wasn't flowery. It was clean, precise, like someone had actually listened. It traced the story of a retired telecom manager who used estate law, digital archives, and silence to reclaim her home and her voice. No quotes from Lindsay. No dramatic embellishments. Just facts. And at the bottom, a closing line that stopped Ginny mid-breath. When no one picked up, she answered herself. She didn't speak. But Donna noticed the change in her eye sweatness without collapse, emotion without spectacle. "You okay?" Donna asked gently. Ginny blinked once. "Yes, it's just..." She couldn't finish. She didn't have to. The phone rang. not the South landline, a crisp, old-fashioned trill that cut cleanly through the quiet. She answered on the third ring. "Whitaker Residence," she said, smiling softly. "Dinner tonight?" Eli's voice came through, clear, hopeful. "I got the pasta. Thought maybe you could bring dessert." Ginny looked at the lemon bar, then at Donna, who raised an eyebrow. "I'll make fresh ones," Ginny said. "Give me an hour." "Perfect," Eli said. "And hey, thanks for everything." "Don't thank me," she replied. "Just lock the back door before dark." They both laughed, and the line disconnected not abruptly, but neatly, like a door closed with care. Ginny placed the receiver back in its cradle. No voicemail light, no red blinking warnings, just stillness. She stepped into her small hallway, past the framed photo Donna had hung of her younger self in front of the old server banks, past the slip of paper tacked to the fridge with Eli's class schedule, past the grocery list she'd written in ink that finally reflected only her own tastes. Then she walked to the sunroom. It had no nameplate, no fancy chair, no designer lighting, just a second-hand love seat, her notebook, and the quiet kind of light that fills a space without demanding to be noticed. Outside her window stood the house. Her house. No, his now. Eli's bike was leaned against the porch railing. The lawn had been trimmed. The blinds were open. And from this angle, she could just see the sign he'd mounted on the inner wall of the entryway's mall, wooden, painted in Donna's familiar hand. "Peace lives here." She pressed her palm against the glass and let herself breathe it in, one last time. This was never about vengeance. Not really. It was about frequency, clarity, connection. Final line. "They disconnected me. I rewired everything."